I'm really grateful to speak after the others, because I'm going to say the same thing, but differently. Here we go. You may have thought, looking at the title of my presentation, what La Serenissima and the Serenity have to do with science and perhaps art of environmental health. I'll jump to my conclusion right away. I will explain how city life and the human experience are intertwined, and how it's not the hardware of cities, the infrastructure, but it's software, the people, that make them tick. This is a story about people, their values and their beliefs. People shape cities, and hopefully the decisions and politics that shape cities for them. In an instance of great serendipity, the nickname of one of the best cities in the world resonates with a theme from one of the most Australian movies ever made. Venice, the most serene, La Serenissima, gained its moniker from its influential position as an urban center of trade and the arts. For centuries, the most serene ruled the center of the world, the Mediterranean. It wasn't necessarily great serenity it projected onto the lands and the seas it ruled, in the sense of untroubled tranquility. They were at war often. But within Laguna Veneta, she was the most serene. Such serenity was also found by Daryl Kerrigan, Dad. In the movie The Castle, his family of typical Aussie battlers lives on a toxic dump right next to an airport runway. Their home becomes, as Australiana aficionados would know, under threat of compulsory acquisition for the expansion of the airport. We have a new airport. The Kerrigans, with the help of Queen's Counsel Bud Tingwall, successfully fight this danger. The film portrays significant images of supreme Australia cuisine, as you may know, and the enjoyment of the great wide open. The Kerrigans holiday at Bonnie Doon on Lake Eildon, right under a high-voltage power line, to maintain the battler spirit, I guess. But all in the world is right, as Dad reassures the family.
The serenity of the place.
How's the serenity?
I think he also just loved the word.
So much serenity.
Serenity in the face of environmental health threats. Maybe that's the great allegory for the current stage in Sydney's evolution. We are no La Serenissima. At best, our nickname is Harbour City. That's a bit disappointing, I would say. Don't we deserve better? Some people, and not the least, have argued that the new Western Sydney Airport is our opportunity to make things better, like it eventually was for the castle. With enthusiasm, the new airport has already been declared an aerotropolis, a kind of urban-centered aviation-free trade zone. Oh, the serenity. The new airport's location, Badgerys Creek, is in our part of the world. It's within the footprint of the southwestern Sydney Local Health District. My centre, CHETRE, and the Population Health Division of the district of which CHETRE is part, have been concerned about the health dimensions of this aerotropolis idea. We thought, and that echoes Michael's concerns, when you're designing an airport anyway, why wouldn't you design it for health? An airport could be an engine for health. That might not cost anything extra and yet would potentially yield so much. As I said, airports, in our view, are engines for health. Airports, however, are highly complex environments with impacts that go far beyond their direct footprints. They have flight paths extending far beyond the visual horizon and ecological footprints that may be quite significant. We have currently identified at least 120 dimensions of what would be a healthy airport. And we will be starting to map these by looking at statutory and planning parameters for health, so not disease, at and around airports. Just to show you an example of such complexity, obesity. You may have heard of the Obesity Foresight Map, an originally UK government-based effort to map causal and final evidence-based connections that lead to the current obesity pandemic. My colleague, Timur Burikin, turned the two-dimensional map into a three-dimensional ball, and it has a shocking degree of complexity and multi-layered causality. Everything is always connected to everything. But the first lesson from this is that complex problems need cunning, multi-dimensional solutions. So it's an interactive thing. I turned it into a little movie. You will see that not one factor in this connects to only one other factor. Every factor connects to multiple other factors. So we need to think complexity about this. The issue here is a quote often attributed to political scientist Charles Lindblom. In academia, he said, we see big brains looking at small problems. In politics, it may be small brains looking at big problems. So neither of those perspectives is very useful, is it? I've been researching health in urban environments for about 3 decades. I've looked at hundreds of cities in Europe, in North America, and a little bit here in Australia. Only since I came to Australia, it has dawned on me that the research in this field falls into different paradigms. And I don't use that word very lightly. I really mean paradigm in the Thomas Kuhnian meaning, different worldviews, different ways of looking at reality. In the traditional Kuhnian way, paradigms clash. In urban health research, one paradigm is driven by the World Health Organization's Healthy Cities program. This started in the 1980s as a small demonstration project for city governments embracing the 11 qualities, and I'm not going to read them out. But these have been developed evidence-based by public health revolutionaries Trevor Hancock, a British-Canadian futurist, and Leonard Doole, a psychiatrist and urban planner. This movement now embraces tens of thousands of cities around the world, from l'île aux Grues, which is 200 people on a very small island in the mouth of the Fleuve Saint-Laurent, to 16 million people in Shanghai, and from Pointe-Noire, a city that probably you don't know, but it's the second largest city in the Republic of the Congo and a port, to Milan, Italy's fashion capital. So it's hugely diverse, and we've been looking at all of those different cities, trying to deploy our own evaluation paradigm. The other paradigm enthusiastically adopts a quantitative view of urban health research. It's driven by a traditional and largely epidemiological view of the distribution of health and disease and its determinants in urban environments. So it maps connections, causality, finality, etc. I've always regarded the second perspective essential but not critical to improvements in health and well-being of what's usually called the urban dweller. But I also would say that we don't need more problems. We don't need more research identifying what the problems are. We need more solutions. And in that sense, the Healthy Cities program, I think, offers solutions. The more recent model on this slide, so on the left from the Melbourne livability researchers, maps problems, I think, and Healthy Cities maps solutions. To understand the tension between problem and solution in research as well as in policy, let me share 3 quotes with you. The well-known urban planner Sir Winston Churchill once said, "We shape our cities and after that our cities shape us." Len Doole, the psychiatrist, would have added that cities are alive. They are organisms that need to be fed, they need to breathe, they need the opportunity to evolve and develop. But as a healthy organism, they can only do this appropriately in balanced and sustainable ways. Professor Billy Giles Corti of livability fame would argue that we need to measure all dimensions of that development. And what gets measured gets done in policy. Well, to counterbalance that, measurement is important, but anyone who has ever, even peripherally, been involved in the business of policy development and politics would share my sympathy for a quote by Nobel Prize-winning economist John Maynard Keynes. There's nothing a government hates more than to be well informed, for it makes the process of arriving at decisions much more complicated and difficult. Policy and politics is not evidence-based. Evidence-informed at best, but not evidence-based. If we want this town, Sydney, or 3 towns, or however many, string of pearls, the conurbation or metropolis, or let's call it what it is, and I'm using a term coined by one of the fathers of modern urban studies, Konstantinos Doxiadis, the small megalopolis. If we want this town to be that healthy organism, that healthy city, we need to consider what truly adds value to the livability and human dimension of this place. Is it really an appreciation of the numbers, the quantifiable big urban data that describe the urban lot? Does infrastructure make for a good megalopolis? Or to echo something I said earlier, the good aerotropolis? Is it money? Is it fiber to the node? Or is it what we, people and communities, do with what we create and what creates us? The human connections, our ingenuity, our creativity, our boundless enthusiasm. You will know by now where I stand. I believe people matter. Numbers are good, numbers are important, and perhaps even critically unavoidable. But it's the human spirit that makes numbers come alive, and the human spirit that adds value to infrastructure, money, and even nature. In the castle, Dad says at one point, I'm really starting to understand how the Aborigines feel. This house is like their land. It holds their memories. This land is their story. It's everything. You can't just pick it up and plonk it down somewhere else. This country's got to stop stealing other people's land. In the research that I have been doing in, with, and for hundreds of healthy cities around the world, we've demonstrated that it is exactly this kind of resonance with important belief systems that make critical change. Let me give you one example. The numbers don't lie. People in disadvantaged communities are less healthy and live less long than those from more privileged communities. Eminent advocates and epidemiologists like Sir Michael Marmot have measured and described this into exquisite detail. There's a conviction here in Australia that such inequity isn't good. Everyone is entitled to a fair go, and there shouldn't be any reason why some people are unhealthier than others. But this is not how things really are in this city of ours. Disadvantage, in spite of the fair go, leads to ill health. Yet one of the most dramatic and outrageous health inequities in the world cannot be neatly mapped like this. The state of indigenous health and well-being should be a collective embarrassment that pains all of us, always. Measuring it, quantifying it, KPIing it, indicatoring it will not make a difference, our research suggests, until the issue becomes a broad community engagement issue. We're not good, I think, at doing equity in this country, in spite of the fair go. Equity in European healthy cities isn't just a slogan. It isn't a bunch of concerned public health and social services folk whining and writing reams of reports. Under the leadership of the European Office of the World Health Organization, the Health Directorate of the European Union, and civil society, equity is a real thing, a real concern, and a priority for local political leadership. Our research shows that local communities and their political representatives, their mayors, can embrace very tangible activities that deal with the system's origin of inequity. Whether it is Rotterdam in the Netherlands, Amarussion in Greece, or Udine in Italy, inspired leadership thrives on community engagement and gets real things done. We need the numbers, and we need the logic, but we also need the passion to make this place worthy of a spectacular nickname a la Serenissima. And I've given this a bit of thought, trying to find an Australian slang term for great city. Ripper city? Internationally, that might not resonate. So I propose we aim for Il Bonzissimo, a bonza city. The most bonza town of the South. We could go for that. Is that attainable? I think so. We have lots of good people with good and colorful plans. What I think we need to create and nurture is joint passion, joint engagement, and a joint sense of connected purpose. So this plan we've seen before. While we're at it, let's get some high-speed rail. Thank you very much.